In this video, I'm going to discuss the Vaeshya, or sometimes pronounced Vaeshya, Varna. Now, this is the merchant Varna, and it's a very interesting one. I think that it's going to make a lot of sense in the context of today's society. Before I get into this, in the previous videos, we discussed first the move from Shudra to Kshatriya, from the common man to warrior. In the next video, we discussed the move from Kshatriya or warrior to Vipra and the Vipra mindset taking over society. This will be the discussion of the move from Vipra to Vaeshya and a little bit of the return to Shudra. As you remember, this is the human social cycle, so it's going around in a circle. Always goes back to the beginning, which technically there is no beginning, but if you start in one place, it goes right back in a circle. That being said, what I want you to remember is, first, it does not return to the place that it was. This is, you could say this is kind of like a cycle moving this way. Right? So it is moving forward in time, and the advances that you receive in the past stick with you. So long as the history is there and the memory is there, all of the technological advances that you had, or the societal advances, or the understandings, stay. It's the first thing to remember. We're not talking about a collapse of society. And furthermore, these cycles happen within organizations inside of history. So there are big cycles and little cycles. And the thing to understand is that this is a process of evolution. This happens through a process similar to the biological evolutionary process of natural selection. This is not a forced process. It's not like the thinkers come in and someone just decides, okay, thinkers, we all want to be in control, and there's a thinker revolution. That's not how this moves. What happens is there are places in society where someone behaving in a certain way gains a competitive advantage for themselves and or is able to deliver a competitive advantage for the person in power, thereby making themselves valuable to the individual in power and giving themselves a seat at the table, which in some instances, because of the interaction between the two, allows the other mindset to become dominant. So it's usually, and almost always, it's a need of the dominant society mindset that is bringing up the one that's after it. It's bringing it forward. And then the momentum of this one moving forward pushes this one down. And at the same time, it lifts the next. So these are always present in society, and they're always in motion. And so at any given time, if you have a view of the history, or if the time span that you're talking about is short enough, you can start to look at these sort of dominant processes or cultural attributes or behaviors of one of the particular varnas and see that it's evolved, and you can start to see what things may look like when that varna is dominant. Okay, so let's get into the Vaeshya merchant varna. Now, as we had said before, the Vipra, as they rise to power, have a problem that they encounter. The problem that they encounter is, as the thinkers, while the Shudra are producing, right? They are the farmers. Mainly in primitive societies, that's when you see a Shudra, they're a farmer. They're growing something, they're producing something. They're taking a natural resource and turning it into something that can be used. In the most primitive societies, that's going to be food. The kshatriyas bring resources to the group through raiding. They can go to another tribe or another group, and through force of arms, they can take things from that group and bring them back to their group. So in that way, they are productive. They are able to add more resources. The thinkers, though, can do one thing in terms of adding more resources, and that is they can magnify, through technological advances, the return for the farmer, new farming implements, for instance, to the raider, new concepts of fighting, new ways of carrying stolen cargo back. Slavery, we talked about, they introduced slavery. And that reaches a point where it can go no further. You can only produce so much at any given time. And in early history, the advances that you were able to make happened very slowly. Very slowly. The diffusion of technology, a lot of that is about a critical mass of population, a critical mass of people thinking about the problem, and a lot of different resources and examples. But in the early days of the Vipra societies, you don't have that. And as the Vipras come to power, and as it takes over, you start to have more and more of them. This could be represented as a priest class, because they're the ones who invented religion. This could be represented as an administrative class, a bureaucracy, right? The more rules and laws that you make, the more people you have to administrate those laws. So it grows and grows and grows, but as you take these, you're taking these people off the farm, you're taking these people off the battlefield, and you have to support these people. Into the mix enters the merchant. Now, the merchant has been there. And the basic background of the merchant mindset and what they understand is they understand the process and the concept of profit. And so let's just go into like just the on the basic level, what it is that we're talking about. Because it's a psychological process. A lot of people don't get that. What profit essentially is, all that it is it's a difference in perspective when it comes to the value of an object between two people. And the difference in perspective is profit. I'm going to give you an example, simple example. Let's say I have a friend, and he tells me that he's looking to buy a TV, a particular TV. And he's looking online and he's like, man, cheapest I can find this thing is $500. Cheapest I could find it is $500. I think when I get my next paycheck, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get this thing for $500. Now you overhear him say that, so you know that to him, the value of this TV is $500. Now, let's say you're over at another friend's house. And he says, yo, man, I got this TV, and I haven't even used it because then my brother had this better TV, and so he just gave it to me, and it's like much bigger. And you notice, oh, this TV is the same one that my buddy said he wanted to get for $500. And he's like, man, you want to buy this TV from me? I mean, it's new, it's in the box. I just don't have a use for it. Like, dude, if you gave me $250 I'll sell it to you. And you're like, wait a minute. You call your friend and you're like, hey man, you still looking to get that TV? He's like, yeah. You're like, yo, if I had it for $400, would you buy it? It's like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, man, that'd be great. Brand new, $400. He's like, I'll buy it today. So you say to your friend, okay, man, here's $250. You pick up the TV, you drive other side of town, give it to your friend, he gives you $400, you pocket $150. And both of your friends are stoked. Both of them are happy. They both feel like they got a good deal. That process, by the way, where it's like immediate, where you're making money just off that someone over here wants it for more than someone right here is selling it, and you can do it pretty much immediately, it's called arbitrage. And it's the most profitable sort of business that you can have. But here's the deal. Merchants create wealth. Because if you think about it, you just created something out of nothing. Here's $150 in your pocket for nothing. You didn't make anything, right? You didn't do anything except just take advantage of the difference in perspective of the value of this TV in a box between two different people. Now, for a class that is not producing anything, and when a society has gotten big enough that they've basically raided everybody that they could, they're taxing their people at the highest level that they can without there being a popular revolt. This is a very nice little avenue to explore. So, in these societies, cities start to grow, and the merchants come. And in order to do business within a city, which the merchants want, by the way, because the other thing about it is the symbiotic relationship between a merchant and an advanced society is this. You can't, as a merchant, get rich, acquire a lot of wealth without a government structure around you to keep you safe. Merchants, in order to get rich, need advanced Kshatriyan Vipran societies. You don't want just a Kshatriyan society, because if you're rich, the king, he just takes. So there's no reason to get rich. Right? He's just like, oh, that guy's got all that money, I want it, boom. He's not a thinker. The thinkers develop rules, and the thinkers develop tax structures and tariffs and fees. So it's like, hey, look, we'll protect you. That's sort of the unwritten rule. We'll protect you, merchants. Come within these city walls. Remember, walls, defendable cities, Vipra. Come into these walls and abide by these rules, Vipra, and we'll protect you. If someone steals from you, we'll catch them and we'll chop their hand off, or we'll kill them. Right? Come in here, and in exchange, you just pay us. You pay us some of your profit. This is fantastic. So what starts to happen? In these cities that are developing markets, all the merchants come in, they get protected. There's more people in the market, so there's more arbitrage happening, right? This merchant comes from an apple producing place. But when he goes back, potatoes sell for a lot back home. There's a disparity in the value. So it's valuable for him to go out with his caravan, go get the apples from his people, take them to this place where it's a potato producer, but they love apples, make that exchange, come back with the potatoes, and he ends up getting the difference, the profit, the profit, the profit. And so in these societies, if I'm in charge, I say, okay, 20% of all of your profit comes to me, the Vipra in control of society, with the Kshatriyas as the warriors, or maybe the king as a ceremonial head. But the religion or the advisors are really pulling the strings because the king's never going to think about this whole process. This is a Vipra thinking about this process. And he's like, okay. And then with that 20%, they go back either back into the market, or they just take 20% of the goods as they start coming in. And now what they have, without fighting, is all of these people bringing them in goods, and all they have to do is protect them. Well, shit. They're protecting their resources anyway. And what starts to happen is you develop situations where there are two big examples, and they should be it should be really telling. Two huge examples where they just stop producing altogether in these city-states, the leadership. And they rely completely on this Vaeshya attitude. The first group, that's amazing and developed really a great Vaeshya Vipra symbiotic relationship, is ancient Jerusalem. By the time of the Romans, Jerusalem, the money in Jerusalem and the activity in Jerusalem was centered, yes, they had the marketplaces, but the real money, the big money, was centered around the temple. And just a little breakdown. The most amazing breakdown of this is in a book by Reza Aslan called Zealot. It's kind of the historical story of Jesus, or in other words, if not Jesus, it's an exploration of what Jesus's world would have looked like, right? Because you can really only understand a person when you understand them in the context of the world that they lived in. You know, because for instance, if you were to go to somebody in, 20 years ago and talk to them about the amount of time that people spend taking pictures of themselves, and they're like, I don't understand. Why are they taking so many pictures of themselves? Like, why are they taking pictures all the time? Well, it's to post it on social media. What the fuck is social media? Well, it's this thing where you get, and then you try to explain it, and they're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because it doesn't make sense to them. You have to, and so somebody's actions are really very much about the context of their environment. And Jesus, what was the action that busted him out? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? The Christians will know this one. He went and he turned over the money changers' tables at the temple. Now, for the Christians who knew that, what's the money changer? What's the money changer for? Explain to me the system of money changing, and explain to me why that was a revolutionary act that would get somebody killed. And go. Because it's never talked about. So here's what it was. The temple had these various levels, courtyards. And it was kind of like the way that a nightclub works, right? You had like the first level where everybody could go. Then you had the second level that was like a little bit higher class, maybe the aristocracy. Then you had the third level that was just the priest class. And essentially what it was, to enter, what you did was during the festivals, you would come in, and it was a blessing to sacrifice an animal inside. And it was more of a blessing each one of these rings that you would go up into. And in the temple, you had to sacrifice animals that were clean, that had been ritually blessed by the priests. And you had to buy those animals inside the temple. You could not bring in outside animals, sound. It's kind of like the nightclub situation, right? You can't bring in outside alcohol. You have to drink the alcohol that's inside the club. Right? You can't bring outside snacks into the movie theater. Not supposed to do that, right? But that's a ritual. Go to the movies. Oh, I'm going to get popcorn, but you can't bring your own popcorn, and the prices are exorbitant. Kind of the same thing. So not only that, you couldn't even pay with your own money. You couldn't pay with your own money from outside. You had to get ritually pure money. So let's say in the first level, it's like, it would be like small birds, like pigeons, doves, whatever. And so there would be merchants who would come in, who would be authorized by the temple. They'd bring in their stuff. The people would come, and the money changers would change your money for the ritually pure money of the temple, for the temple money. But here's the thing. Let's say it was two temple coins to buy a dove, but it was a 1-to-2, say, exchange. So 2 temple coins to buy a dove and inside, and 2 gold coins to buy a dove outside, but you would have to pay 4 gold coins to get the 2 gold coins to buy the dove. Starting to get it? So, let's break it down. Merchant comes. He says, I've got doves. They're 2 gold coins. They say, okay, you're good. Go in there. Hang out. I come up. I say, I'm going to get a dove. They say, well, there are 4 temple coins. Or let's say they're 2 temple coins. And 2 temple coins are going to cost you 4 gold coins. So I give them 4 gold coins. I buy a dove. Now the temple has 4 gold coins. This guy's got 2 temple coins. The merchant, he comes back and he exchanges his temple coins for gold coins. The temple just kept a profit. And so what Jesus was fundamentally upset about when he did that was they are making money off God. They've set up a system where they're making money off God. Interestingly enough, 600 years later, in Mecca, the people who control Mecca, the Quraysh, are doing the same type of thing. They've created basically just a festival town for religious festivals, every religious festival. It's kind of like a Vegas. And when you come in, they tax you as you come in. Little different system, but still the same thing. That they're making money off God. And Muhammad ended up going back to Mecca and overthrowing the Quraysh after he was banished. The Quraysh wanted to kill him because he was speaking out against them. Not only that, Muhammad himself was a caravan driver. He was a Vaeshya, a caravan leader. And his wife, Khadija, who was the first Muslim, basically, his first follower, was she was older than him. And when he married her, after being hired as her caravan leader, she was the wealthiest woman in Mecca, certainly, but she may have been the wealthiest person. She was a widow of a very wealthy guy. So this is how the connection is made between the Vipras and the Vaishyas. And how Vaishyas come to power is that the need of the Vipras, the need of a Vipra society on their activity becomes so great that they are able to dominate the conversation. Right? We see this with, in England, it was basically England needing the wealth of the spice trade in particular that brought the British East India Company into power. The Dutch, they militarily really didn't do much, but it was all through trade, through the Dutch East India Company, that they gained their power around the world and became such a force. It was all through trading. But in those early days, the British East India Company, they had a military. That was basically the control of India, was basically them. The American Revolution and the whole Boston Tea Party, that was the tea trade back and forth and the taxation of that tea trade that led to the uprising in the Americas. So when you have this society that, look, when the money's coming in from the merchants, man, we're killing it with these taxes. Yo, we're killing it. And the Viper class grows and grows and grows. The thinker class grows and grows and grows. This is great. This is great. And they're surviving on that because the production stops. Right? It's not like Mecca has a whole lot of productive farmland. The only way to become wealthy is trade. They're not producing, they're trading. So when you reach that situation, you have a Viper class now that is about money. It's about generating money. And if these guys come in and they're either offering money to individuals or whichever merchant says, hey, I can make even more money if you give me a monopoly. Monopoly is the most productive because you have no competition. The most profit. Give me a monopoly. Boom. A monopoly is a government program. The British East India Company had the monopoly on all the trade routes to bring spice to Britain. To bring spices, which are high profit. Patents, copyrights, those are monopolies. Every patent is an exclusive ability to use a particular technology for a particular period of time. What could be better than that? If this technology can generate money and I never have to worry about anybody else out competing me, boom. Who enforces trademark law? Who enforces copyright law? Those are governments. Would Google innovate? Would Google do all of the things that they're doing to push technology forward if every single time they made an innovation, anybody in the world could just pick it up and move forward with it? Right? What would Coca-Cola do? If anybody in the world, if I right now could just take a bottle, make an exact copy of Coca-Cola, and I was able to sell it for less than they can sell Coke for. Right? Outcompete them. They'd be out of business. What would even be the point of starting a business? And so you see this interaction with Vipra, which is primarily, in our society now, government, bureaucracy, legislation. These are thinkers. Remember, the politicians. And the main tax base, corporate taxes. Why do they get so pissed off when it's like, that company's not paying taxes, they're hiding their money? Well, of course they're hiding their money. They don't want to pay taxes. Right? Their whole job is profit. So the turnover in this process happens when the merchants gain enough wealth because they've been protected both militarily and legally by their patron governments, that they make enough money where it's more profitable to purchase, especially in democracies, but even in dictatorships, to purchase the individual at the levers of power, to keep the competitors out, to increase their competitive advantage. But at that point, what you've reached is you've reached the Vaishyas in control. Just in the same way that the Vipras controlled the minds of the Kshatriyas, the thinkers controlled the swords of the Kshatriyas. Let's even go further back. Okay? Look at it like this. The warriors control the plows of the laborers, of the Shudra, with the sword, with intimidation. Physical intimidation. The thinkers, Vipras, control the swords of the Kshatriya warriors with the mind, with religion, with rules. And the Vaeshya, the merchants, control the minds of the thinkers with profit, with money, with resources. So then you can kind of see which age we are living in right now and how advanced it is. And now you got to think to yourself, okay, that's the move. So, Vin, are you telling me that the Shudra masses have a lever of control on the Vaishyas, on their profits? In an advanced Vaeshya world, you've got your laborers and you've got your consumers. They're the same people. You've reached the arbitrage state almost, haven't you? Right? So let's say you've got the guy, and what do they often say? Well, these workers at the shoe factory can't even afford the shoes that they're making. Of course they can't. Of course they can't. If they could, it wouldn't be profitable. That's how the whole thing works. So long as this group is willing to work and be a capital resource, and that it's like, okay, they've provided, this shoe costs $20 to make, right? This person provides $5 worth of that. I pay them $5. And then it's $15 in material. I've got to sell it for $21 to make a profit, or $20.01 to make a 1 cent profit. But this person's only got $5. But that's how the game works. That creates a big problem. A big, big problem for the Vaishyas, for the merchants. Because they have to keep an equilibrium. If they reach a point where no one can buy their products because no one's making enough, then they can't sell that product. Or if they reach a point where they have to pay so much to these people that no one can afford to buy it, it's basically the same thing. So, what does a move look like? What are we potentially looking at as we move into the future? Because I believe that we are on the cusp of that next move happening. You may have some ideas, probably not what you think, at least in my opinion. Because again, remember, this is an evolutionary process that's going to happen on its own. It doesn't require revolution. It doesn't require anybody to think about it. It happens on its own because a competitive advantage in a certain behavior makes the whole wheel turn. That's what I'm going to talk about in the next video. The move from Vaeshya to Shudra. And we'll get into the talk of why this is called the Ascendant Project. If you want to discuss this, you have any questions, you have any comments, please hit me up. Facebook.com/VinArmani. I love to have discussion. It increases the quality of these videos as we move along, and I want to be able to answer any questions that you have. And you know what? Hopefully I get some new questions out of your comments as well. I'd love to hear your insight. So thank you very much, and the next video is soon to come.